Boy, there's nothing like oversleeping for your own program. But at least I don't have a boss yelling at me like, where were you after? You're supposed to be here an hour ago. But I apologize, folks. I intended to do this show live. I overslept. That's what I get for staying up too late and thinking I could get up at the last minute and do the program. All right, well, enough of the excuses. Let's get on with today's show, and it starts in 3, 2, 1. Coming up on today's edition of Haff in the Morning. Trump staff shakeup slows down transition for new administration. Roger Ailes denies harassing Megyn Kelly. And Ape and Heels comment gets West Virginia officials in trouble. Details on these stories, plus a whole lot more, awaits you on this episode of Haff in the Morning.
Pay attention, boys. I'll show you how it's done.
To give you kisses around.
And a good Tuesday, my friends. Welcome to another episode of Haff in the Morning for the 15th day of November, 2016. I'm your host, Joe Haffer, with you for the next couple of hours, bringing all the latest news, weather, and other bits of information for this day. And thanks for tagging along for this live podcast. And I encourage you to drop me an email at haffinthemorning@gmail.com. That's HAFFinthemorning@gmail.com. Or give me a call at 660-956-9878, 660-956-9878, or call me for free on Skype at Joe Hafner Media. That's HAFFNER, Joe Hafner Media, all one long word. Also, if you're near a computer and curious about my website, yes, I have a website. Well, it would be a podcast without a website. Be a podcast without a website, wouldn't it? Anyway, check it out, tinyurl.com/HafnerMedia. tinyurl.com/HafnerMedia. And with that being said, let's get on to the program that talks about anything and everything. And that's exactly what I plan to do on today's program, as usual. And again, I apologize. I went to bed with every intention of getting up at least about 10:30 this morning. Well, I woke up a little before 10:30, and I thought I'll sleep a little bit longer, and my secondary alarm will kick in, and we'll be good to go. That didn't happen. Instead, I must have shut off that secondary alarm because I woke up at about 11:20, and I'm like, well, great, I missed my own show. I feel like a total boob. I missed my own show. And so I was like, okay, well, screw it. I'll just go ahead and start the program a little bit later. I thought I was going to record it. I thought, well, might as well just do it live. Put it on at noon because I wasn't ready at 11:30. Didn't have everything quite set then. I just still needed to get a couple more things put together. But we're working on that now, okay? Got that taken care of now. Well, welcome to the program, my friends, and a follow-up to a couple of personal statements I made on yesterday's program in regards to some weekend tragedies here in the area. First of all, a young 19-year-old man who happens to be the son of a coworker and a colleague of mine, as I said, committed suicide over the weekend, and it's been really, really difficult, to say the least. I didn't know this kid, but I understand to a certain extent what the family is going through, because I've known of people in my life who have committed suicide, and even the threat of suicide is even scarier. All right, I won't go into full details, but let's just say that there are a couple of people in my life who I love very much almost committed the act, and I'm glad they didn't. One of them is long since dead now, but it's a scary situation. And I encourage you that if you see someone who may be heading toward an early demise like that, to try to reach out to them. Sometimes you don't see it, but they're usually warning signs when you look back. And sometimes it's not clear until a lot of time has passed. So if you see someone in your life, even a casual acquaintance, reach out, okay? It will save a lot of guilt. And really, life shouldn't be so overwhelming, especially now with all the technology that we have and all the resources that we have here, that we shouldn't be seeking such a detrimental end, especially for someone who's just 19. I mean, when I was 19 years old, I had the world by the tail, or so I thought. You know, I was in college, thought I was going to make something better of my life, you know, dreaming of a future of building my own family. And granted, that hasn't happened yet, but, you know, so, again, if you see someone who needs help, please reach out. It's the human thing to do. And the other story that I wanted to bring up was of a drunk driving accident that happened north of here on Sunday afternoon. And the driver now, regrettably, is facing criminal charges. I'm not saying he shouldn't, but it is regrettable that his life got so out of control that 3 young people died as a result of this man's bad decisions. An 18-year-old woman, a 16-year-old boy, and a 15-year-old girl were killed in an accident on Sunday. And as a result, a 27-year-old man is now facing 3 charges of vehicular involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts of felony second-degree assault, DWI first offense, and CNI driving. And so he's looking at doing a lot of jail time, a lot of prison time probably for this. And so, again, my heart goes out to the victims, all the victims in this, because that should never have happened. It should never have happened, but nevertheless, it did. All right, well, moving on with the program, as we talk about anything and everything. It's going to be an interesting few weeks leading up to January's presidential inauguration, to say the least. You know, good or bad, whether you like Trump or not, I have a feeling that it's going to be an exciting time for comedians and whatnot. You know, just it reminds me of that scene in Back to the Future when Marty meets up with the young Doc Brown in 1955, and Doc asks Marty who the president is in 1985, and it says Ronald Reagan, the actor, and you know, and so I suppose Jane Wyman, and you know, yada yada yada, and Jack Benny is the Secretary of Treasury, and you know that joke eluded me for years, and then I'm like, oh, I'm a Jack Benny fan now, and you know, back then I knew who Jack Benny was to a certain extent, an old-time comedian, but I never listened to his material that much back then. Well, the Trump administration is shaping up to be a lot like that joke, and unfortunately, we're the butt of that joke. You know, here in what, 3 months? Let's see, no, 2 months. 2 months and 5 days. Whoa, 2 months and 5 days. You know. Well, here's what you need to know to get you up to speed on what's happening in the world today. Of course, for many of you, you probably already know this anyway, but I'm doing it for the sake of this podcast and for the sake of, for historical purposes, okay? For my journal here. First of all, Steve Bannon. People are outraged that Donald Trump has chosen the head of Breitbart News, Steve Bannon, as his chief strategist. Well, what did you expect? I mean, Donald Trump has knocked mainstream media, so of course he's going to go to an extreme group like Breitbart News. You know, it's either that or Alex Jones, possibly even Rush Limbaugh, I could have seen. But of course he's going to go for a non-traditional strategist. This is a non-traditional administration, non-traditional party, to say the least. Well, Bannon is a favorite among white nationalists and has been responsible for racist, misogynistic, anti-Semitic headlines for years. And numerous advocacy groups have united against him. So, of course he's going to pick a bigot or someone related to that. Now, maybe this guy will put aside his racist, misogynistic, antiquated beliefs aside, but they will leak out. They will leak out. It's going to be contrary to what we've seen over the last 8 years. President Obama is asking rattled Americans to give Trump a chance, calling him sincere and pragmatic. Well, I agree. Trump is sincere. Pragmatic, maybe. I don't know. Pragmatic in an eccentric way, okay. Well, the president took the message abroad, will take that message abroad today, seeking to reassure deeply shaken foreign allies that Donald Trump, the man he called an unqualified peddler of wacky ideas even just a week ago, isn't all that bad. And this is what you call diplomacy, okay? Yeah, 8 days ago, I was bad-mouthing this guy, but, I've talked to him, I've met him face-to-face, we've reached an understanding. Although if you look at the body language in those pictures, you could clearly tell that these two men don't like each other, and the feeling is mutual. I don't like Donald Trump, and Donald Trump probably wouldn't like me that well. All right? Nevertheless, he's going to be our next president, assuming that the Electoral College says otherwise. Then there's the hot car verdict. A Georgia man by the name of Justin Ross Harris has been found guilty of murder in the 2014 death of his 2-year-old son. The boy, Cooper Harris, died after being left in a hot car for several hours as Harris worked and sexted with multiple women, some of whom were underage. Wow. The Syrian civil war. Residents of Aleppo received a terrifying text yesterday, "Flee or die." Now, just for the moment, could you imagine President Gary Johnson trying to deal with the situation in Syria right now? What is Aleppo? We had a presidential candidate who was ignorant of foreign affairs. And whether you like it or not, we're in a global economy now. So whether you agree with what's going on over there, or you understand what's going on over there, it doesn't matter anymore. You have to know what's going on beyond your borders, whether you think we should be involved or not. This notion of, well, we need to pull our resources back here. Well, I agree, we need to pull some of our resources back here, but not all of them. Because that's what got us into World War I, World War II, attitudes like that. It's Europe's problem. It's Russia's problem. It's Japan's problem. Well, guess what? Their problems become our problem when they can't trade with us, when they can't make deals with us. Well, residents of Aleppo, as I said, received that terrifying text message yesterday. The text warned of an impending strategically planned assault and was probably sent by the Syrian government. Still, many refused to leave despite the threat and the worsening shortage of necessities like food and medical care. And there may be a chill in the air where you live, but a UN agency says this could be the hottest year ever. 2016, the hottest year ever on record. It's climate change, the UN officials said, which is also why extreme weather events like flooding and heat waves are continuing to get worse. So, as a matter of fact, right now it is 59 degrees, which is not atypical for this time of year. But the grass is still incredibly green, and the leaves are starting to fall, finally changing color. But this has been a really screwy fall. We haven't had a hard freeze yet, and we're in the middle of October, literally at the middle of October middle of November right now. We're in the middle of November, and we still haven't had a hard freeze, which is something we would have had about a month ago. And we've had some cold and chilly nights, but it's not been too unpleasant to go out in light clothing, a little windbreaker. Now, in about a month, I have a feeling that's going to change. We typically get a rude awakening about the first weekend in December. But so far, it has been unseasonably warm. Well, newscaster Gwen Eiffel died yesterday at the age of 61. And there have been a lot of tributes posted online about the PBS reporter, and including this one from President Obama.
On a personal note, Michelle and I want to offer our deepest condolences to Gwen Eiffel's family and all of you, her colleagues, on her passing. Gwen was a friend of ours. She was an extraordinary journalist. She always kept faith with the fundamental responsibilities of her profession, asking tough questions, holding people in power accountable, and defending a strong and free press that makes our democracy work. I always appreciated Gwen's reporting, even when I was at the receiving end of one of her tough and thorough interviews. Whether she reported from a convention floor or from the field, whether she sat at the debate moderator's table or at the anchor's desk, she not only informed today's citizens, but she also inspired tomorrow's journalists. She was an especially powerful role model for young women and girls who admired her integrity, her tenacity, and her intellect, and for whom she blazed a trail as one half of the first all-female anchor team on network news. So Gwen did her country a great service. Michelle and I join her family and her colleagues and everybody else who loved her in remembering her fondly today.
Anyway, Gwen Eiffel, born Gwendolyn L. Eiffel, was an American Peabody Award-winning journalist, television newscaster, and author. She was the moderator and managing editor of Washington Week, and co-anchor and co-managing editor with Judy Woodruff, who worked for CNN for a number of years, of the PBS NewsHour, both of which air on PBS. Eiffel was a political analyst and moderated the 2004 and 2008 American vice presidential debates. She was the author of the best-selling book, The Breakthrough, Politics and Race in the Age of Obama. So my thoughts go out to the family and friends of Gwen Eiffel. Again, died yesterday at the age of 61. And what an extraordinary journalist. I mean, she started in 1977, graduated with a Bachelor of Arts Communications degree from Simmons College in Boston, Massachusetts. In 1999, she became the moderator of Washington Week in Review. 5 years later, moderated the VP presidential debate between Dick Cheney and John Edwards. So, again, a great loss to the world of journalism, real journalism there. What else is going on today? How about we switch over to the political scene here for just a little bit and see what's going on in that regard. Give me a moment here to clear out my throat. Tell you, all this warm, dry air screws with the voice. Well, President Obama encouraged Americans yesterday to give President-elect Donald Trump some time to get adjusted to the responsibilities of the presidency. But in his first news conference since last week's stunning election results, Obama warned that some of Trump's expectations will soon be shaken up by the gravity of the job. The president said he was certain after meeting with Trump last week that his successor and longtime political foe was sincere about being president for all Americans, but also called on the president-elect to reach out to the people who felt anxious about the explosive rhetoric of the campaign, especially women and minorities. I don't think he is ideological. I think ultimately he is pragmatic in that way, And that can serve him well as long as he has good people around him and has a good sense of direction. And the Wall Street Journal's Michael Bender and Carol Lee report that during their private White House meeting on Thursday, President Obama walked his successor through the duties of running the country, and Mr. Trump seemed surprised by the scope, said people familiar with the meeting. Trump aides were described by those people as unaware that the entire presidential staff working in the West Wing had to be replaced at the end of Obama's term. Oh my God, really? Even I know that, and I'm just a novice armchair political pundit here. Surprised that you have to get your own staff. Well, what did you expect? Well, after meeting with Mr. Trump, the only person to be elected president without having held a government or military position, Mr. Obama realized the Republican needs more guidance. He plans to spend more time with his successor than presidents typically do, people familiar with the matter said. I'd love to be a fly on the wall in those meetings. Oh, man. This is our next president. I told you he's not qualified. He's not ready. This is what happens when you put an outsider in an insider job. You may not like that in politics, but that's the way it is in any job. Without proper training, without proper background, they're going to be a fish out of water. And Donald Trump is a fish out of water. And he's got 2 months and 5 days to get this crap sorted out. So, oh my. Well, from CNN's Ryan Brown, Elise Labott, and Jim Sciutto, Donald Trump's transition is being marked by sharp internal disagreements over key cabinet appointments and direction, both for internal West Wing positions and key national security posts. Sources involved with the transition team told CNN recently. One source with knowledge of the transition described it as, quote, a knife fight, unquote. The split has put traditional Republican operatives like Reince Priebus, named Trump's chief of staff on Sunday, against more non-traditional influences such as Steve Bannon, the alt-right leader of Breitbart News, who will also be Trump's chief strategist. A particular challenge is lack of clarity about the division of power among Priebus, Bannon, and Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who also has a key role in transition decisions. Another source tied to the transition described the resulting confusion as buffoonery. Remember, the Electoral College and the American people said this is the guy we want, and this is what we're going to be stuck with for the next 4 years. Hopefully not 8 years, but that's the intelligence of the average American out there. All right? Most people only think two-dimensionally. And, you know, it may sound good to have an outsider in the job, and I'm not saying they shouldn't. You know, it's worked out before. But at least with people like, say, President Truman, at least he had some Senate experience to draw upon and VP experience before he had to take the big role in 1945 when FDR died. But Donald Trump is clearly out of his element here, and we're getting screwed in the process because we have a man with no political experience, no military experience, making those very decisions every single day. And he's going to be responsible for making those decisions for, let's see, how many days is that? Let's see if I can find my calculator here real quick. And, hey Siri, how many days between January 20th, 2017 to January 20th, 2021? Okay, let's see what we got here.
It's 66 days until then.
Never mind, Siri. Well, we got 66 days to get Trump trained for this job. I don't think if we even had 66 weeks, we would be anywhere closer. Man. Oh, wow. Well, let's see. Let's see if I can do the math real quick here. All right, hold on. Oh, no. All right, where's the calculator on this thing? All right, here we go. Calculator. There's the calculator. All right. So let's say 365 days. There are going to be 3 years of that. Whoop, hold on. 365 times 4 plus 1. So the Trump administration will last a minimum of 1,461 days. Okay, that's from January 20th, 2017 to January 20th, 2021. So in those days, in those 1,461 days, Trump is going to have to learn the job. I'm not saying he can't do it, but I have a feeling he's going to be extremely overwhelmed, and his staff, I think, is also underqualified to help out. It's going to be a lot like, you remember that episode of I Love Lucy, when Lucy and Ethel were in the chocolate factory, and their training was basically pick up the chocolate and wrap them in the wax cellophane. And that's what we're being stuck with here. Well, after years of operating on the far-right fringe of American politics, Steve Bannon is now being tapped as one of the most influential members of Donald Trump's White House. Bannon was the executive chairman of Breitbart News before Trump hired him in August to run the campaign. The site has a history of publishing incendiary and divisive stories, many of which are outright anti-Semitic, misogynistic, and racist. Now, Trump has appointed Bannon as chief strategist and senior counselor and equal partner with Reince Priebus, the Republican Party chairman, who will be the chief of staff. It is the latest and clearest signal that Breitbart has risen from right-wing outlier to conservative juggernaut. And it's just not going over well in some quarters, to say the least. Wow. It's going to be a long, long 4 years, my friends. But we're in this together, and I'm going to be here poking fun at it every step along the way. All right? I have noticed, though, in the past week, it has been harder to find funny sound bites to kick off the program, because during a campaign season, a presidential campaign season, you're guaranteed almost something daily if you just do a little digging. Now I'm having to dig a little deeper, and it's like, well, this garden is dry, so I'm having to go back to the old traditional comedy sound bites from other sources, and some of them aren't as funny as the stupid things that politicians say. Well, speaking of stupid things that politicians say, Trump staff shakeup slows down transition to near halt. Yeah, President-elect Donald Trump's transition operation plunged into disarray earlier today with the abrupt resignation of Mike Rogers, who had handled national security matters. It is the second shakeup in a week on a team that has not yet begun to execute the daunting task of taking over the government. So, this is what happens when you have a message of disrupting the normal flow of politics and political process, that it's going to have a backfiring effect. Well, in a statement earlier today, Mr. Rogers, a former congressman from Michigan who led the House Intelligence Committee, said he was proud of the team that was assembled at Trump for America to produce meaningful policy, personnel, and agency action guidance on the complex national security challenges facing our great country, and that he was pleased to hand off our work to a new transition team led by Vice President-elect Mike Pence. Mr. Pence took the helm of the effort on Friday after Mr. Trump unceremoniously removed Governor Chris Christie of New Jersey, who had been preparing with the Obama administration officials for several months to put the complex transition process into motion. Now the efforts are frozen, senior White House officials said, because Mr. Pence has yet to sign legally required paperwork to allow his team to begin collaborating with President Obama's aides on the handover. Holy effing crap. Really? What's the holdup? You don't like the president? Well, get over it. Sign the damn papers. Start the process. This is the problem with a lot of Obama haters, that your disdain for the president is so strong that you won't even do the legal work. Or at least send in a lawyer to recover the papers, and he'll tell you where to sign them. But good grief. If that's what the holdup is, we're all screwed. Well, an aide to Mr. Trump's transition team, who insisted on remaining anonymous to discuss internal matters, said that the delay was taking place because the wording of the document was being altered and updated, and that it likely will be signed later today. Okay, let's hope that's the case. Still, losing an hour may not mean much in the grand scheme of things. Part of a day, maybe not. But still, that could be going toward a long way toward making the transition to this new administration. Still, the slow and uncertain start to what is normally a rapid and meticulously planned transfer of power could have profound implications for Mr. Trump's nascent administration, challenging the efforts of the president-elect to gain control of the federal bureaucracy and begin building a staff fully briefed on what he'll face in the Oval Office on day one. The chaos caught the attention of some senior Republicans who criticized Trump during his campaign, but said that after he won, that they would not necessarily rule out joining his administration or advising him. Elliot Cohen, former State Department official, said on Twitter that after having spoken to Trump's team, he had changed his recommendations. Stay away, they're angry, arrogant, screaming, you lost, they'll be ugly. Well, Mr. Obama has repeatedly said that his priority is to ensure a smooth and professional transition, a process for which his team and aides to Mr. Trump, as well as Hillary Clinton's staff members, had been quietly preparing for several months. Mr. Christie, who until Friday served as Mr. Trump's transition chief, signed a memorandum of understanding on Election Day to put the process into motion as soon as the outcome was determined. But in response to a series of questions about whether the Obama administration had begun to brief Mr. Trump's team, White House officials said late today that the president-elect's decision to abruptly replace Mr. Christie on Friday with Mr. Pence had, for the time being, frozen up the process. By law, the document must be signed by the chairman of the transition operation, and Mr. Pence has yet to do so. Among other things, the paperwork serves as a mutual non-disclosure agreement for both sides, ensuring that members of the president-elect's team do not divulge sensitive information about the inner workings of the government that they learned during the transition period, and that the president's aides do not reveal anything they may discover about the incoming administration's plans. Brandy Hoffing, a White House spokeswoman, said President Obama's team was working with Mr. Pence to sign the document, standard agreement, whose wording is largely governed by statute. An aide to Mr. Trump's transition team, who insisted on remaining anonymous to discuss internal matters, said that the delay was taking place because the wording of the memo was being altered and updated, but is most likely, again, won't be signed until later today. The turmoil at the highest levels of the staff upended months of planning and preparation for a process that may describe as drinking from a fire hose, even in the most orderly of circumstances. A period of about 70 days between the election and the inauguration on January 20th. During that time, the president-elect must assemble a team to take the reins of the massive federal bureaucracy and recruit, vet, and hire 4,000 political appointees to help him run it. Teams throughout the federal government and at the White House have prepared briefing materials and status reports for the incoming president's team, are on standby, waiting to begin passing the information to their counterparts on Mr. Trump's staff. Remember, the American people wanted this, and now they got 66 days to iron out this mess. All right, what else is going on today? Racism is very much alive in this country. That's no trade secret. Some blame President Obama, some blame the media, but I blame it on just good old-fashioned ignorance. And a nonprofit group's director and a mayor in a small town in West Virginia have been swept up in a firestorm surrounding comments about First Lady Michelle Obama that have been perceived as blatantly racist. After Donald Trump's election as president, Pamela Ramsey Taylor, who was director of Clay County Development Corporation in Clay County, or rather in Clay, a tiny town outside Charleston, reportedly posted about the move from Michelle Obama to Melania Trump on Facebook, saying, "It will be so refreshing to have a classy, beautiful, dignified First Lady back in the White House. I'm tired of seeing an ape in heels," according to NBC affiliate WSAZ. A ape in heels. Translation, it's nice to see a white woman back in the White House. That's the way it should be. Well, the news station reported that the town's mayor, Beverly Whaling, then replied, "Just made my day, Pam." Wow. How stupid can you be? Well, the comments were later deleted. How convenient. But images of the post have been shared widely on social media. As of yesterday afternoon, an online petition calling for the women's terminations had garnered more than 14,000 signatures. Both of their Facebook pages have been removed, according to the Charleston Gazette-Mail. 0.2% of Clay County's residents are African American, according to census data, and more than 3/4 of the presidential votes cast in the county went to Trump. The two women have apologized for their remarks. Well, I certainly hope so. Taylor could not be reached for comment, but WSAZ reported that she had issued an apology on Facebook. However, Taylor told the news station that the public response has become a hate crime against me, explaining that she and her children have received death threats. Well, what did you expect? I'm not condoning the death threats by any means. But when you call the First Lady an ape in heels, come on. Grow up, people. Well, she said she is planning to file a lawsuit against the people who have slandered or libeled her, according to the news station. A representative of Clay County Development Corporation, which is a non-profit-funded group with state and federal money, said the board removed Taylor from her position as director and appointed Leslie McLaughlin to take her place. You know what? I don't feel sympathy for you. Because if you can't handle your own racist statements, you got no reason to complain. Well, Roger Ailes. Don't you just love this guy? Boy. Well, apparently he has denied sexually harassing Megyn Kelly at Fox News. Yeah, given your track record, Mr. Ailes, I'm not buying it, okay? I'm not buying it. Well, just one day before Megyn Kelly's Settle for More memoir came out, the Fox News channel host, ex-boss Roger Ailes, is adamantly insisting he did not sexually harass her again. He categorically denied the allegations Megyn Kelly made about him. Well, the former media head honcho and alleged Donald Trump campaign advisor said in a statement released through his lawyer Susan Estridge. And anyway, set to air on Tuesday, the Kelly final host filmed an appearance on Dr. Phil today discussing Ailes' alleged actions, detailing her dealings with now President-elect Donald Trump, both in front of and behind the camera too. Kelly has been a tireless promoter of the sure-to-be best-selling Settle for More in anticipation of the November 15th publication. Earlier this month, Ailes, also through his lawyer, previously rejected such allegations of sexual harassment as detailed in Kelly's books. I, for one, am inclined to believe Megyn Kelly, especially considering that Roger Ailes has had a track record of sexually harassing women at Fox News, most notably Gretchen Carlson, who I have become a big fan of. I've read part of her book. I plan to finish it here in the near future, but she is a remarkable woman, and I really misunderestimated her. I misunderestimated her. I sound like President Bush W, don't I? But anyway, that's where we stand today. All right. Well, we're 21 minutes away from 1 o'clock here in the Central Time Zone, the only time zone that matters to you and I. And what do you say we play a little bit of music here? But first, on this edition of Haff in the Morning, wish to encourage you to drop me an email at halfinthemorning@gmail.com. That's HAFFinthemorning@gmail.com. Or if you feel like talking with me on the phone, 660-956-9878. 660-956-9878. Or call for free on Skype at Joe Hafner Media. Just look up Joe Hafner Media on Skype and we'll get right through. But first, let's find out what's going on in the world of news here briefly as we roll through the program on this edition of Haff in the Morning.
What's in the news? Pushy moms.
Not only is this a safety school, it might be a good strategy.
Yeah, it's a good strategy school.
I'm Steve Kaith in CBS News. 10 women at New York City's LaGuardia Community College have a special role.
You need to know whether or not you've hit the send button.
For the last couple of years, they've been working for the school's chief engagement officer, Karen Dubinsky. She and these moms pushed their own kids into a 4-year college. Now they're pushing others.
Meeting deadlines, getting everything in order without somebody pushing them is very hard. Without someone saying, did you get that essay in? Well, when is that due? Do you need to take a test?
Melanie Rose is one of the volunteers.
Every school's going to ask for some references.
She's working with student Pierre Wilson.
This is uncharted territory for anybody in my family. I'm kind of the trailblazer along the way.
A lot of these students have been pushed in the right direction to schools like Columbia and Cal Berkeley. Zoraida Colon got into Smith College in Massachusetts after connecting with a pushy mom 2 years ago.
Just the insight to know that I can move forward, and that a lot of times coming from a community college you might feel like less than, or you might feel like I'm not prepared for this big private school that has a great name, but just support.
Mom Pam Weinberg says along with support they lay out expectations.
When someone is setting a bar for you, your natural inclination is to want to reach that bar and reach that goal. And our students, by and large, really do.
Now this.
Jennifer, would you like some milk?
Okay.
And Hershey syrup? Jim, want some milk?
Sure, Mom.
And Hershey syrup?
As good as milk is, the rich chocolatey taste of Hershey syrup makes it even better. Just ask your kids.
Michael, how about some milk? And Hershey syrup?
Hershey's syrup makes good things even better.
Introducing the Ford in your future, the new Ford Fairmont. A new car designed for today and the years ahead. At 33 miles per gallon highway, 23 city, Fairmont has the highest mileage ratings in its class. Yet it has 90% of the head, leg, and shoulder room of most large cars. And base sticker prices for the Fairmont line start at just $35.89. Fairmont, roomy but with mileage like a small car, and the lowest sticker price in its class. Test drive Fairmont, the newest, better idea from Ford.
What's in the news? I'm Steve Kaith, CBS News.
AP Showbiz Minute. Gwen Ifill, co-anchor of PBS's NewsHour with Judy Woodruff, and a veteran journalist who moderated 2 vice presidential debates, has died Monday of cancer, aged 61. A former reporter for the New York Times and the Washington Post, Ifill switched to television in the 1990s and covered politics and Congress for NBC News. She moderated the vice presidential debates in 2004 and 2008. Bono has been named Glamour magazine's Man of the Year. The U2 frontman was one of numerous stars honoured at the Women of the Year event in Los Angeles Monday night. Other stars in attendance included Gwen Stefani, Cara Delevingne and Leona Lewis. Shailene Woodley's trial has been delayed by a month. The actress, who faces charges related to her protest against the Dakota Access Pipeline, has pleaded not guilty to criminal trespass and engaging in a riot, both misdemeanours that carry a maximum punishment of a month in jail and a $1,500 fine. Woodley is now due in court on February the 22nd. This is Matt Kemp with AP Showbiz Minute.
And you're listening to yours truly, Joe Hafner, here on this edition of Haff in the Morning. And, oh, thank you, computer. That really does nothing for me. All right, let's try this. Trying to get the Dave Ross program, but for whatever reason, the computer does not like this codec for some reason. And I don't know what is going on here. Okay, well, it looks like I'm going to have to do it the old-fashioned way. So we're going to be a little bit late with the Dave Ross show. Tell you what, I'll run the CBS World News Roundup right now and try to find some other way to get Dave Ross on the air. Okay? I will not be deterred. All right? I will not be deterred. He said turd.
Key Trump backer could get important post.
Rudy Giuliani up for Secretary of State.
Will President-elect's children be White House insiders?
They'd be able to then receive the top secret security clearances.
Release in a murder case made for TV.
There's no reason that he will flee. Where's he going to go?
Good morning. I'm Steve Kathan with the CBS World News Roundup. A week after his stunning election win, Donald Trump is shaping his administration. And CBS's Steve Futterman says a high-profile, outspoken figure could be America's top diplomat.
He has been labeled America's mayor for his role after 9/11. Now Rudy Giuliani may be in line to be America's top foreign policy official. This morning on NBC's Today Show, Trump advisor Kellyanne Conway had praise for Giuliani.
He certainly is a very close advisor of President-elect Trump's, and the mayor has enormous skill set, would be an excellent member of the cabinet, and that's where I'll leave it.
During the campaign, Giuliani was one of Donald Trump's most vocal loyalists. On CBS this morning, John Dickerson said that could present a problem.
If you surround yourself with loyalists, you cocoon, and all your thinking gets wrapped into a tight bubble.
As for Giuliani himself, he had some fun with the speculation last night at a Wall Street Journal event. He was asked about another possible candidate, former UN Ambassador John Bolton.
John would be a very good choice. Is there anybody better? Maybe me, I don't know.
Steve Futterman, CBS News, New York.
A transition official insists nothing formal has happened yet, but CBS's Juliana Goldman reports the Trump team's exploring the idea of getting some of his adult children top-secret security clearances.
Former intelligence and White House officials say that Trump's request is truly unprecedented, given that his kids don't have national security backgrounds. Now, ethics watchdogs are also sounding alarm bells. They say the fact that Trump wants his children armed with access to some of the nation's top secrets raises even more questions about the potential conflicts of interest with them playing roles in the Trump administration while also running the family business, and whether they could use the intelligence for their financial interests.
There's no let-up to anti-Trump protests in some major cities. Students in East Los Angeles marched out of class, a scene repeated at other schools thanks to a social media effort.
Compromise.
At Ohio State, it took an ugly turn when a protester was shoved down a flight of stairs. He wasn't seriously hurt. A 24-year-old student was arrested. President Obama's in Greece. He's trying to calm allies who've been unsettled by the election results. CBS's Margaret Brennan is in Athens.
Despite Mr. Trump's assurances to the president that he will stand by NATO, Europeans worry that his friendly outreach to Russia means that Vladimir Putin will have free rein to do as he pleases. And there's concern that the historic agreements brokered by the U.S. with European help may now be in jeopardy. That includes the Iran nuclear deal and the International Climate Change Agreement.
Putin and Mr. Trump spoke on the phone yesterday. The transition team says they touched on a host of issues. Chief prosecutor at the International Criminal Court suggests U.S. armed forces and the CIA may have committed war crimes by torturing detainees in Afghanistan. The State Department says the investigation is not warranted or appropriate. Thousands of firefighters have their hands full with wildfires in several southern states. This Atlanta area mom says a persistent smoky haze is a health concern.
I have twins with asthma, 12-year-old twins, and being outside with them, I'd noticed them coughing.
North Carolina's governor says it could take months to put out all the fires in his state. After 4 days of deliberating, a Georgia jury found a 35-year-old man guilty of murder in the hot car death of his toddler son. The attorney for Justin Ross Harris promises an appeal.
From the moment we met Ross Harris, we've never once ever wavered in our absolute belief that he's not guilty of what he's just been convicted of.
But prosecutors presented evidence showing Harris watched an online video that showed the effects of long periods in a hot car and texted a woman on the day his son died saying, quote, "We both need escapes." There's a new development in the story that made the documentary Making a Murderer a favorite among TV binge watchers. Here's CBS's Vicki Barker.
Brendan Dassey freed after 8 years in a Wisconsin prison.
Why did he have you come over there?
It was this police interrogation that helped convict the learning disabled 17-year-old.
Probably to get rid of the body.
It also helped get Dassey's uncle, Stephen Avery, convicted for the rape and murder of a local photographer, all portrayed as a miscarriage of justice in the series Making a Murderer.
This is not a finding, now the case is over, now he's out for good.
Attorney Alex Flynn says prosecutors are still fighting to reinstate Dassey's conviction.
A stockpile of American war stories preserved in Washington may soon get bigger. CBS's Stephen Portnoy.
Housed at the Library of Congress, the collection contains the personal stories of some 100,000 veterans from World War I.
We had a long tour in the trenches.
To the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Oh, I actually enlisted on September the 11th, 2003.
A bill due for final passage in the Senate today would open up the Veterans History Project to Gold Star families, so parents, siblings, spouses, and children can share the stories of the service members they've lost. Backers hope to gather 1,000 more oral histories for the project. Stephen Portnoy, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
The AAA says 48.7 million of us will journey 50 miles or more from home this Thanksgiving. That's 1 million more than last year and the most since 2007. A new report reveals nearly half of all workers this year got more money, one way or another. CBS's Peter King.
About 37% of the survey's respondents say they got raises at work. 12% say they got higher-paying jobs. Bankrate.com senior economic analyst Mark Hamrick says it's a sign
that as long as the job market continues to heal, as long as we can have growth at the current rate or even better, that there should be more pay raises for more Americans in the months and perhaps years to come.
But there's still the half of those surveyed that didn't get raises. He says those are mostly less educated workers, part-time employees, and seniors.
Ben Franklin's known for saying a penny saved is a penny earned. It turns out tens of thousands of pennies that have been tossed onto his Philadelphia gravestone have helped crack it. A fundraising campaign's now been launched to pay for repairs. An influential publication has picked its car of the year. WWJ Radio's Jeff Gilbert says the choice is positively electric.
Motor Trend describing the Chevy Bolt as quiet, fun to drive, and unconventionally good-looking without using any gasoline. GM North America President Alan Beatty calls this one of Chevrolet's finest moments.
Absolutely awesome. We're absolutely thrilled.
Ford Super Duty pickup was Motor Trend's truck of the year. Mercedes GLC was SUV of the year. Jeff Gilbert, CBS News.
It's a brand new ball game for a retired general who was a former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Martin Dempsey has been elected as chairman of USA Basketball, the governing body for the sport that picks teams to the Olympics and other competitions. Dempsey has been a special advisor to the NBA. That's the World News Roundup. I'm Steve Kathan, CBS News.
I'm going to do very restrained if I use it at all. I'm going to do very restrained. I find it tremendous. It's a modern form of communication. There should be nothing you should be ashamed of. It's where it's at. I do believe this. I really believe that the fact that I have such power in terms of numbers with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc., I think it helped me win all of these races where they're spending much more money than I spent. And I won. I think that social media has more power than the money they spent, and I think maybe to a certain extent I proved that.
Welcome back to the funky sounds of Haff In The Morning. 8 minutes away from 1 o'clock on this Tuesday afternoon, the 15th day of November, 2016. And got the Dave Ross show. At least I was able to dub it into the system the old-fashioned way. But for whatever reason, the computer is not transferring it over the cloud drive just yet. But eventually it will get there, I hope. Hopefully before the end of the program. If nothing else, I'll just have to get a flash drive and transfer it that way. Well, let's see. We're taking care of the CBS News Roundup. Also have the Showbiz Report. How about we take care of some market information in just a moment, and then maybe by that time the cloud drive will wake up and send the information over that I need. All right, I'll put that over here. And to tell you about this. As a matter of fact, funny little message a little bit ago, at least funny to me. I've told you about my friend Joy on this program over the past couple of weeks. Well, for whatever reason, she's having trouble remembering my birthday lately. And she's always been good about remembering my birthday. But some years she gets distracted and so forth. And this year's no exception. And I knew that had to be the case. I wasn't worried about her. You know, we've been friends for 30 years and probably be friends for another 30 years or more. But anyway, she just posted a while ago a belated happy birthday. I can't believe I missed it again. I guess I'm just going to have to send her something more than just a Facebook announcement about my birthday, or it's like, you remember November 13th? You remember when I turned 16 on Friday the 13th? You were relentless and reminded me of that fact. But anyway, that's the beauty of friendships, isn't it? Let's see what else we got here for you. How about this one? This is something I've been advocating for quite a while. I'll explain why in a moment. Electric and hybrid vehicles can be eerily quiet machines, especially even at low speeds. And the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration believes that's a safety problem. Starting in 2019, the NHTSA will require all new electric and hybrid light utility vehicles to make noise at speeds below 19 miles per hour to alert pedestrians they're in the area. You think? A couple of years ago, I was out walking, exercising, and I had my headphones on, and, at a reasonable volume, so I could still hear stuff around me, and keep it at a low level so that I'm not blasting my ears out, and also to listen for cars that may be coming up behind me. Well, I walked across the street, and I did not notice coming over the hill was a hybrid car. It's a Toyota hybrid car, and I was about 2/3 way across the street, and I have that sensation that something is behind you, but you're not sure, and you're thinking it's just your paranoid mind. Well, I turned around, and there was this Toyota hybrid right behind me. I think it was a Prius, and the driver's just looking at me like, will you please move? I'm like, well, will you please get a car that makes some noise? Here's a card. Put it in your spokes, like I did on my bicycle when I was 12 years old, to make it sound like a motorcycle. I could not hear it. I could not hear it. The thing was so quiet. I mean, I've heard louder vacuum cleaners than that. Well, let's see here. I do have the Dave Ross Show. It came over here. We'll play it for you in about 14 minutes from now, because we have market information right now on this edition of Haff in the Morning.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Goldman Sachs. To learn more about developments currently shaping markets, industries, and the global economy, subscribe to the firm's podcast, Exchanges at Goldman Sachs, available on iTunes.
And by Lenovo. Lenovo's next-generation data centers are built for cloud computing. They allow you to expand and contract server space on demand without adding more hardware. Lenovo servers are #1 in reliability and performance. Learn more about how Lenovo is transforming the data center at lenovo.com/datacenter.
Big new questions about who watches Wall Street under the Trump administration. From Marketplace in New York, I'm Mark Garrison in for David Brancaccio. A top regulator is calling it quits, opening the door for the Trump administration to dramatically change the way Wall Street is regulated. Securities and Exchange Commission Chair Mary Jo White is stepping down. Marketplace's Kimberly Adams joins us from Washington to talk about what this may mean. Good morning, Kimberly.
Good morning, Mark.
So first, Mary Jo White, tell us about her track record at the SEC.
So, unlike some of her predecessors at the Securities and Exchange Commission, which is supposed to be the watchdog on Wall Street, she didn't really have to deal with a big crisis a la housing market collapse. She instead had the job of implementing Dodd-Frank financial regulations, kind of rolling out all the changes that Congress demanded during the recession. But doing that made her a bit unpopular on both the right and the left. Some thought she went too far with regulations. Others, like Elizabeth Warren, said she wasn't doing enough to curb the excesses of Wall Street, so much so that Warren even called last month for President Obama to replace White, which he refused.
And so it said it will be a President Trump replacing White. What does that mean for Wall Street oversight?
Right, so it's no surprise that White resigned. Donald Trump has been clear. He wants to roll back Wall Street regulations, as we've been reporting, including dismantling Dodd-Frank. It's also worth noting that once White leaves, there will only be 2 commissioners at the Securities and Exchange Commission. There are supposed to be 5. Congress has blocked President Obama's nominees to fill those spots, so Trump will actually need to pick at least 3 people to keep an eye on Wall Street once he gets to office.
Okay, Marketplace's Kimberly Adams in Washington. Thank you.
You're welcome, Mark.
And let's do the numbers. Stocks are something of a mixed bag in global trading. In the UK, shares are up 0.6%, but in Germany they are down 0.1%. Asian markets closed mixed. Congress is back in D.C. with a pile of work to do and not a whole lot of time. The government only has funding to stay open until December 9th. So first order of business is a spending bill. Marketplace's Adam Allington reports on the choices lawmakers face.
It's been a while since Congress has approved funding for the government for a full year the way it's supposed to, opting instead for stopgap measures that last a few months. So how about now? Jim Timon is with the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials.
I think it's about a 50-50 shot that they kick the can down the road to the next administration.
Timon says he expects transportation to be given priority in the lame duck session and beyond. And then there's that whole defunding Obamacare thing.
And there is some talk of trying to do something even in the lame duck session.
Bob Bixby is the executive director of the Concord Coalition, a budget watchdog group. In addition to zeroing out Obamacare, he says increased spending on things like transportation and national security could present a problem when coupled with Trump's promised tax cuts.
So I kind of look at it and think that we're probably going to see some very large budget deficits coming out of the next few years.
One thing about lame duck sessions, however, if you do pass spending increases, it's easy to just pin that blame on the outgoing Congress. I'm Adam Allington for Marketplace.
President-elect Trump says he'll boost the economy by pouring money into fixing America's roads, bridges, and airports. Details are scarce, but the number $500 billion has been tossed around. Marketplace's Rima Crace takes a look at one infrastructure project and its economic impact so far.
Last year, after his job ended at a construction site, 21-year-old Alberto Gomez
started getting lazy like everyone else does.
A month passed, then 2.
I said I got to get off my butt and just go to work again.
He didn't need to go far. A huge project to rebuild LA's 6th Street Viaduct was just getting started. You may have seen this iconic bridge with its swooping steel arches. It's played a supporting role in more than 1,500 movies and commercials. Remember that drag racing scene in Grease? The bridge had been weakened by what's known as concrete cancer, not what you want during a big earthquake. For months, Gomez has been working on the bridge's demolition.
I'm blessed with this job, and it's like a long stretch, over 4 years on this job site, so close to home. Can't get any better than that, right?
Gary Lee Moore, the city engineer for Los Angeles, says the new bridge will have bike lanes and a 12-acre park underneath it. He says the roughly $500 million project will put hundreds of people to work.
It's a lot of real jobs. For instance, a laborer, their hourly wage is in the low $30 range.
There will also be work for steel producers, LED designers, structural engineers. Then there are what Joseph Kane from the Brookings Institution calls induced jobs, like extra staff for nearby restaurants or
the barber, perhaps, who could be cutting the construction worker's hair.
A report from Standard & Poor's says a $1.3 billion investment in infrastructure can pump $2 billion into the economy. But there are downsides. Moses Aguilera owns a bodega 2 blocks from the LA construction site, and he says sales are way down.
Yes, like 30%.
And the bridge won't be done until 2019.
This is the beginning. We don't know what's going to happen in the future.
Construction worker Alberto Gomez knows what he wants for his future, enough work to finally be able to move out of his mom's house. I'm Rima Crace for Marketplace.
And finally, you might think of running shoes as a nonpartisan zone, but these days even our feet aren't safe from today's harsh politics, as New Balance is learning. It all started when an executive at the shoe company made supportive comments about President-elect Trump, inspiring some folks to light their shoes on fire and share the infernos on social media. Over the weekend, New Balance picked up some support, but not the kind it wanted. It was an endorsement from a white supremacist website. Now New Balance is just begging to be let out of the political cage match. Its latest statement says the pro-Trump comments were taken out of context and the company, quote, does not tolerate bigotry or hate in any form. Our producers are Justin Ho, Katie Long, and Daniel Shin. Our engineer this week is Bill Lance, and I'm Mark Garrison with the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.
This Marketplace podcast is brought to you by Saturn Systems, a domestic alternative to offshore and metro outsourcing, partnering with customers to deliver custom software and quality assurance services for over 25 years. More at SaturnSys.com.
It's Marketplace Tech for November 15th. I'm Ben Johnson in New York. The latest numbers from the U.S. Elections Project suggest that a week ago, the votes cast in the presidential election hit 132 million. That's close to 60% of eligible voters in the U.S. There are about 191 million people in the country on Facebook, and in recent days, critics have been saying that the social network helped to spread fake news and keep like-minded people in their own bubbles, leaving many shocked by the election's outcome. Over the weekend, Mark Zuckerberg responded, suggesting the company is, quote, extremely cautious about becoming arbiters of truth ourselves, end quote. Kelly McBride is vice president and media ethicist at the Poynter Institute. Kelly, thanks for joining us. What would you say Facebook's job is exactly in spreading information?
Well, it's different if you're Facebook or if you're a user of Facebook. So Facebook's view is that they're just a platform. Their prime business model is to keep you on that platform as long as possible. But many people in the audience are using Facebook as a news distribution mechanism.
Or just the internet.
Definitely the internet. I mean, the internet isn't run by one person, though. Facebook is. So you can't necessarily have an arbiter of truth for all of the internet, but you could for Facebook.
Do you think it has a responsibility to do that?
Yeah, I definitely think it has a responsibility to do that because it doesn't really matter if you set out to be a news distribution platform. That's what your audience is using it for.
How are these responsibilities different, if they are, from a traditional media company?
Do you mean a traditional media company or a traditional journalism company? Because there's a difference, right? Like
right.
A media company has lots of different functions, entertainment.
Yeah, Netflix is a media company, I guess.
Exactly.
Right.
But if you're a journalism company, you have an obligation to get it right and give people what they need in order to make decisions in a democracy.
What do you think the internal conversation at Facebook should be right now?
Gosh, if I'm working at Facebook, I'm asking a lot of questions about whether we really understand our mission, if we should maybe re-articulate our mission, and if we should have a different relationship with our users, maybe making promises to them about the quality of information that they'll see on Facebook or the quality of relationships that they'll be able to develop by using Facebook.
Kelly McBride is vice president and media ethicist for the Poynter Institute. Kelly, thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Let's talk about an important feature of tech company hiring, H-1B visas, which often help foreign graduate students and others get jobs in the tech sector. This is part of the current U.S. immigration policy that some fear won't continue under the administration of President-elect Donald Trump. Gregory McCall is a partner at the Seattle-based law firm Perkins Coie, which advises tech companies on immigration matters. Gregory, thanks for chatting.
Happy to be with you.
Why are H-1B visas so important to tech companies?
The main reason is that the tech companies are growing so fast. They need people who have special skills that aren't always available in the normal, regular workplace that they can find.
How might H-1B visas function under the upcoming Donald Trump administration?
You know, initially in the campaign, he called for the elimination of the program. He said it was a pool of cheap labor. Later, he switched and said it was necessary for U.S. high-tech companies. And more recently, he's talked about the need to reform and perhaps have some provision that companies would have to hire U.S. workers first if they're available. That's certainly not the case now. The H-1B program doesn't require testing of the labor market, and there's no requirement to favor U.S. workers.
Can you talk about the wages those workers are paid compared to American workers?
The current allotment of H-1B visas goes quite a bit to Indian staffing companies that traditionally have been on the lower end of the wage scale. You look at the Apples and Microsofts and Googles, their H-1B workforce is paid substantially higher than those who come in from India to work for Indian staffing companies. So I could see some changes that would impact the wages that are paid to H-1B workers.
might we see tech companies invest more in the education of people here in the U.S.?
My guess is, frankly, that you would probably see them set up shop in Canada, where the immigration policy is substantially more relaxed than it is here.
So you're saying you might see U.S. tech companies start employing people in Canada?
And we saw that maybe a decade ago, in particular here in Seattle, that some companies set up shop in Vancouver to take advantage of the easier way of getting tech workers to work in Vancouver, for instance, rather than be able to work here in the States.
Gregory McCall is a partner with the Seattle-based law firm Perkins Coie, which advises businesses on immigration matters. Gregory, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
And ride-hailing company Lyft made an announcement here in New York City this week. The news, a new advertising campaign, and a big change to the face of the company. The famous pink mustache, it's coming off. A.k.a. coming off the dashboards of Lyft drivers' cars. We were at the event here this week and asked VP and Creative Director Jesse McMillan why the change.
The mustache was something that's really fun and playful, and we're not leaving any of that behind, but we want to make sure that it's really, really easy for passengers to know that this is a Lyft car.
In place of the mustache in the dash will be a pill-shaped light with the Lyft logo that is customizable with different colors, so you and your Lyft driver can coordinate pickups in busy places. Pink mustache, you will be missed by this guy. I'm Ben Johnson, and that's Marketplace Tech. This is APM.
This Marketplace podcast is brought to you by Avast, a digital security company dedicated to protecting you online against hackers, malware, and those that want to do you harm online. The internet is a wonderful place, whether you're an online gamer, social media fanatic, or online shopper, but there are people on the internet who can make it not so wonderful. Avast keeps these bad guys at bay so you can love your internet again without worry. Learn more at avast.com.
And it's time for Today in History, a humorous look at historical events for the 15th day of November 2016. And on the date in 1492, Christopher Columbus noted in his journal about the Native Americans' use of tobacco. I bet that was some fun time observing. Apparently, that was the first recorded reference to tobacco, which came right after a meeting with the local tribes chief. Smells like ashtray breath. Smells like ashtray breath. Oh, yeah. Ironically, the ones using it were with the Nicorette tribe. They were trying to give up the bad habit. The tribe had divided the teepees into smoking and non-smoking sections. Local Indians smoked tobacco and would often walk a mile to search for camels. He first noticed it when he was walking into a casino. Okay. On this date in 1806, explorer Zebulon Pike, I love that name, Zebulon Pike, discovered the mountaintop in Colorado, now known as Pikes Peak. Just think how different it would have been turned out if the explorer William Don't had found it. In 1869, the U.S. began free postal service. Well, I can see how it didn't make any money. On this date in 1889, Dom Pedro, the second emperor of Brazil, was dethroned. I won't go into details how citizens got him to leave his throne, but it was revolting. In 1901, the first electric hearing aid, the Acousticon, was patented. Of course, the trick was finding an extension cord long enough to be able to go somewhere. It was a popular replacement for the gas engine-powered hearing aids, which were so loud they defeated the purpose. And on this date in 1937, air conditioning was installed in the House and Senate chambers of Congress, just like Congress having air conditioning installed in November. And that's a humorous look at Today in History.
My morning commentary is brought to you by the good people at Washington Federal. My wife and I choose to bank with Washington Federal for a few reasons. They're responsible with my money, which is always a good thing for a bank. They actually like face-to-face interaction, and they believe a bank should be the foundation of a healthy community. Washington Federal, invested here. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. How many times have you heard somebody complain, this campaign has been a bad example for our children? Personal attacks coming from politicians give a green light to bullies. How many times have you heard that? But all the finger wagging is not going to change it. That's the world we live in. Once upon a time, the media mediated all that stuff. We could decide which candidates were credible enough to get coverage. We could spike any angle that we thought was too undignified for public debate. But today, people don't need no stinking editors. So politicians are free to revert even more deeply into their feral nature, which is to do whatever it takes to win. But here's the positive part. As bad as the personal attacks were, it's only fair to acknowledge how quickly they stopped. Trump shook hands with the man he called incompetent. And Obama, who only a few days earlier was barnstorming swing states calling Trump unfit, what did he say on Monday?
I don't think he is ideological. I think ultimately he's pragmatic.
He's pragmatic, which, coming from the pragmatist-in-chief, is the ultimate compliment. And that, I think, is a pretty good example for the kids. They're not abandoning their beliefs. They still have their differences, but they didn't stop their cars in traffic, pull out baseball bats, and bash out each other's windows. They were able to call a truce and say what's past is past, and from now on, we are going to act like grown-ups. Until the midterm elections.
The Osgood File. This is Charles Osgood. How will the human race feed itself on a warming planet? There's a man in the Netherlands named Mark van Risselberg whose experimental farm may be part of the solution. Our CBS News colleague Mark Phillips asked him,
how are you finding out what works?
Simply by letting the plants tell us which is salt-tolerant and which isn't.
Which is why they call Mark van Risselberg the potato whisperer. He speaks potato.
Experiments are at the heart of science, hypotheses, what-ifs, and then what? The starting point for Mark van Risselberg's experimental farm was this if, says Mark Phillips.
If rising sea levels and more flooding are the inevitable future of climate change, there's a place in the world that may have found at least part of the solution. Nobody knows more about dealing with encroaching waters than the Dutch, where more and more salty water has been seeping through the dikes onto agricultural land.
So on this farm?
On this experimental farm, they've been trying to see what might actually grow in those conditions.
So, living and dying are the elemental vocabulary of the potato language, says Van Risselberg.
If they die, they give you a statement. Fortunately, we don't have to kill our scientists before they give a statement.
He wouldn't be laughing if that were the case.
But they don't all die, the potatoes, far from it. They've tested hundreds of varieties here, irrigating them with increasingly salty water, and they've found plenty that love the stuff. But there'd be no point unless those survivors were also edible.
That depends on how you prepare it.
The potato whisperer not only provides the ingredients, he has the recipe. I'll try the brown one first. I'm betting this is the salty one.
You're absolutely right, Mark.
So far, so interesting.
The Osgood File. This is Charles Osgood on the CBS Radio Network.
November 15th, 1864. During the American Civil War, Union General William T. Sherman and his troops begin their march to the sea. Their devastating campaign from Atlanta to Savannah, Georgia, strikes at the heart of the Confederacy. 1806. In the Rocky Mountains of present-day Colorado, explorer Zebulon Pike spots the mountaintop, now known as Pike's Peak. 1777. During the American Revolution, the Continental Congress approves the Articles of Confederation. The document governs the 13 states until the U.S. Constitution takes effect in the following decade. 1969. In Washington, D.C., 250,000 protesters stage a peaceful demonstration against the Vietnam War. 1993. A judge on New York's Long Island sentences Joey Buttafuoco to 6 months in jail. Buttafuoco had pleaded guilty to statutory rape for his relationship with Amy Fisher, his teenage girlfriend. Fisher, who shot and wounded Buttafuoco's wife Mary Jo, tells the court at his sentencing,
I'm sad to say that he taught me well. He taught me to disrespect myself and to deceive my parents. Unfortunately, these were lessons I too quickly learned.
And 1940.
With malice toward none, with charity for all.
Actor Sam Waterston, known for his roles in TV's Law and Order and as Abraham Lincoln, is born in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Today in history, November 15th. Camille Bohannon, The Associated Press.
To bind up the nation's wounds.
The Writer's Almanac is supported by the Poetry Foundation, publisher of Poetry Magazine, a monthly devoted to discovering and publishing new voices in poetry. More at poetryfoundation.org.
And here is the Writer's Almanac for Tuesday, the 15th of November, 2016. It's the birthday of the newspaper columnist Franklin Pierce Adams, born Chicago, 1881. Had a very popular column entitled The Conning Tower, which he signed with his initials, F.P.A., remembered now mainly for the fact that it launched the careers of Dorothy Parker and James Thurber. It's the birthday of Georgia O'Keeffe, the painter, born Sun Prairie, Wisconsin, 1887. She lived in New York for a time. It was there she started to paint the enormous flowers for which she is best known. But she took a trip out to Taos, New Mexico, and she came to love the desert. She felt that the thin, dry air enabled her to see farther, and she devoted much of the rest of her career to painting desert scenery. Georgia O'Keeffe, who said, "I've been absolutely terrified every moment of my life, and I've never let it keep me from doing a single thing I wanted to do." It's the birthday of Marianne Moore, born Kirkwood, Missouri, 1887. Her father was an engineer and inventor, spent his life trying to build a smokeless furnace. When his business failed, he had a nervous breakdown. He had to go to an institution for the mentally ill. Marianne Moore was born just after her parents had separated, and she never met her father. She went to Bryn Mawr College, where she majored in biology, and where working in a laboratory had a profound effect on her writing. Marianne Moore, who said, "Precision, economy of statement, logic, drawing and identifying liberated my imagination." It was on this day, 1940, 75,000 men were called to armed forces duty under the first peacetime conscription in American history. The draft, never popular in America. In 1939, a poll had shown only 35% of Americans approved of a draft. But by 1940, with Hitler's army invading, occupying Poland and France, support for a draft had gone up to 92%. So in October of 1940, 16 million young men registered with the Selective Service, the first 75,000 draftees called up to service on this day, 1940. And it's the birthday of the poet Ted Barrigan, born Providence, Rhode Island, 1934, served in the Korean War, went to college, University of Tulsa, then went to live on the Lower East Side of New York City. In the early 60s, began writing his collection of 14-line poems called The Sonnets, which came out in 1964. It was a big success. Wrote the first 6 sonnets in one night, then wrote 2 or 3 per day for about 3 months. Here's a poem for today by Michelle Y. Burke, Trick of the Light. In France, the pickpockets ask tourists to sign petitions against social injustice, then run their hands over their intimate belongings, gentle and needy as lovers. It's hard to judge them harshly, such artistry. Even the rush-hour crowd hurrying toward the downtown sea, parts for the woman in checkered spandex, twirling a hula hoop about her waist while standing on her head. Dear, unobservant God, do not snuff us out. We are beautiful and strange. Trick of the Light, a poem by Michelle Y. Burke from Animal Purpose, published by Ohio University Press, and used by permission here on the Writer's Almanac, supported by Lumosity, brain training developed by scientists and game designers who turn cognitive research tasks into challenging games. Learn more at lumosity.com. Be well, do good work, and keep in touch.
This is the Composer's Datebook for November 15th. I'm John Zeck. Today's date marks the anniversary of the first performance of Jerome Kern's Showboat, produced in 1927 at the National Theatre in Washington, D.C. by Florence Ziegfeld. Showboat's book and lyrics were by Oscar Hammerstein II, adapted from Edna Ferber's novel, which had been published only the year before. It was a most unusual story for a musical, and dealt frankly with alcoholism and interracial marriage. Mixing tragic and comic elements was something simply unheard of in American musical theater of that time. Ziegfeld's secretary recalled that before the Washington premiere, the great producer fretted that audiences would be disappointed that the girls on stage were wearing much too much clothing for a typical Ziegfeld show. There was little or no applause following that November 15th premiere, and Ziegfeld assumed that Showboat was a flop. But the Washington audiences were simply too stunned to react. When Ziegfeld's secretary called to tell his boss that there were long lines waiting to buy tickets for subsequent performances, Ziegfeld didn't believe him at first. But by the time Showboat opened on Broadway the following month, even the great Ziegfeld knew he had a hit on his hands, and one based on great music and a powerful book with nary a scantily clad showgirl in sight. After Showboat, the American musical theater would never be the same. Composer's Datebook is supported by Progressive Insurance, small business protection for more than vehicles, with specialized coverages to protect against financial loss. More at progressivecommercial.com. Composer's Datebook is a production of APM, American Public Media, and the American Composers Forum, reminding you that all music was once new.
Well, that's going to wrap it up for today's edition of Haff in the Morning. I'll be back again with you tomorrow, hopefully at 11 o'clock Central Standard Time, the only time zone that matters to you and me. Reminder, drop me an email at haffinthemorning@gmail.com. That's HAFFinthemorning@gmail.com. And also be sure to check out my website where you can get your own customized news page, sports page, weather page, and a whole lot more, including thanking our sponsors at tinyurl.com/HafterMedia. tinyurl.com/HafterMedia. And in the immortal words of the late, great Jack Larkin, my time is up. Thank you for yours.